All the roads are winding.
Welcome to the show, Ayesha. I'm thrilled to hang out with you again. And we talked way back when we were still Dream Freedom Beauty. So if anyone's curious and needs some more of you, they can scroll a few years back and find you. But welcome to your first time on Earth Speak officially.
I know, I'm excited. It's good to be back together and have, a bit of life that we've lived, and now we can check in and see where we're at.
Awesome. So before we get started, would you like to set the space with an invocation?
I would. And this is something that I've been doing lately just to make sure that I'm dropping into my heart. So it'll take under 60 seconds, and I promise that you'll feel different at the end. So just closing your eyes and taking a big, deep breath in. Just go ahead and sigh it out. And we're going to use our imagination, and this may make some of you feel really uncomfortable. It may make some of you feel really excited, just being with whatever comes up when I ask you to follow me into this sort of imaginary realm. So just picture that you're in this big field, and it's warm and you feel safe. And it can look however you'd like it to, just using your imagination or seeing what's showing up for you. There's two ways, and there's actually infinite ways to do this. And then I just want you to picture a door. And the symbol of the door is going to be universal but unique for everyone. So whatever your door looks like, maybe it's a big, heavy Balinese door that's carved. Maybe it's a little pink cottage door. Whatever door you see is perfect for you. If you're not really getting anything, just go ahead and use your imagination and paint something in. Now, something really magical is going to happen as we open this door and walk through this threshold. And this can happen at any moment. And you can even take notice as you're walking through thresholds in your day. Just become really aware of your body and your breathing right now. And just reach your hand out and take this doorknob and open this door. And as you go through this door, know that you're going into a creative space. A space where you can leave the logical mind behind, the need to know behind, and really just connect with the childlike joy of creativity and imagination, and really listening to the heart. Just taking notice of how you're feeling as you're walking through this threshold in your mind. Then we're just going to take one deep breath. Just go ahead and sigh it out again. And when you're ready, just flutter your eyes open and know that you're in a totally different mind frame for the next hour, however long we're here together.
That was fun. Thank you.
Yeah, I feel like now we're like our kid selves, and we can just chat.
I know. I went to a campfire in the snow, but it was fun, and it had VHS glitch.
Oh my gosh, I love that detail.
I've never had that in a vision before, so
I love it. And the best part of that is we could spend the whole time, especially if there were all the people who are listening, just being like, well, what was your door look like? And what does that symbolism mean to you? And there's so much richness just in that. And so as we pass through this threshold now, we're in a different part of our brain, and we're thinking in a different way, and we've slowed down the brainwave. And now we really can get to the good stuff about how we can all be these creators in our lives.
I love that. Ooh, we're going to get into so much good stuff today. Thank you. So I'd love to hear, what are your lineages?
I like that question. I am such a mixed bag person. When I I grew up Seventh-day Adventist. And so I think to actually not claim that as part of my lineage would be like a slap in the face to Jesus. I got to give it up for, the archetypal energy of Jesus, and however you work with that. There's a lot of people who no longer have to choose between being a Christian and being a witch. Do you know what I mean? So that's part of my lineage and how I grew up. I grew up in the South. And so I feel like just this Appalachian way of life, my grandparents were sharecroppers. So I grew up eating a lot of food that we made. I've got some Native American in my history. And then just as far as things that have really meant a lot to me, in my 20s is when I went on this big journey of like, and still a minute, but like, who am I? Like, what is this? So I've been to like Buddhist temples. I've been to like ashrams. I've been to all kinds of things where I found a little piece of my story. And so, I love this question to start out with because there's so much, I won't say tension around like, I don't even know the word because I don't even use it a lot, but just that, honoring of these traditions that may not be our own, because I've taken so much from so many and I feel like kind of a global person in that way. So hopefully that was like, a good little teaser into, I'm so like collage is my first love. So when I think about all the things that I love and I look around my house, there's just so many influences. And I feel really grateful that I didn't have to like pick one. And many of us feel that way too. So yeah.
When I think of you, I think of a wild heart. And so surely you've come from a lineage of wild hearts.
Yeah. I mean, like if the video does come out, you'll see like Society of Wild Hearts is actually like my LLC. And so I really relate to that. Like I grew up with horses around and they're like the biggest feelers. And like you see a horse run and you're like, this thing is so happy being wild and free. And that feels like a part of my spirit is like that. So thank you for seeing.
I see you. And just like you are like a field of wildflowers. Just, That's awesome. And so where are you now and who are the original people of that land?
Where am I now? This is such a good question because over the last couple of days, I've like shut down. Like I'm not posting on social media. I didn't feel grounded. I'm really trying to like come back to who this person was. And this last season of my life really has been about picking up all the things I loved as a kid. And so this may or may not answer your question, but like I've got this, you've got like the fancy mic with the orange thing. And I just started making music again. I just started singing and rapping and doing all the things I did when I was a kid. I've really gotten back into a physical practice of like being a gymnast. I really like, I know that I'll go to Turkey at some point just to see the whirling dervishes. Because I feel like as a kid, I grew up and that's all I wanted to do was just like tumble. And now that I look back on my life, I'm like, oh, that was a way to reconnect with the divine. Because literally what they're doing is like activating the pineal gland by like swirling and swirling. They're having these ecstatic moments because of the movement in their body. So I'm like coming back to my roots as being a person who moved. Like I made up in my mind as a kid, like I've had all these memories resurface over, I don't know if it's just Pisces season or the fact that we're in 2021 after the year that was 2020, but I've been having all these like old memories come up about when I made up my mind that I was not this thing or I was not that thing. I'm not a gymnast because I looked around and I didn't see anyone that looked like me. And I had this distinct memory of being like, okay, that's not for me anymore. And I'm coming back to all that stuff that I loved. I'm coming back to my roots. I'm coming back to my roots as someone who loves the South and who loves the medicine of the South. Like you could just walk outside and harvest plantain or wild dandelion. And I'm just remembering all of these things about who I was as a kid and the joy that it's eliciting and how I'm like, oh, I had all these things in my mind about how hard it was to make music. And I've just been making beats. I'm like, that's what making music is. You don't have to like release it, put it out for anyone else. So I love that question because I'm coming back to my roots, the roots of the land, but also the roots of like what gave me joy and what was creative about my expression when I was a kid before anyone told me that I couldn't have that or that wasn't me. So yeah, reclamation. I'm reclaiming things finally.
Welcome back, child Ayesha, inner child. I don't know, but I mean, I really resonate with that. Like, it's been inner child has been huge for me lately. So I don't know if it's in the air or what, but it's here. Mm-hmm.
It is here.
Specifically, where are you located in the world?
I'm in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I'm not sure about the land I'm on. I tried to look that up. I think that's important. I love when I hear where the land that people are on because there's something about there's something about the native tongue. There's something about listening to drums. There's something about hearing a whale. There's just something that happens in the body that we recognize it. And this is what I love so much about symbolism, because we don't have to like logically think about it. Like we can get the confirmation of shivers or just a feeling in our body like, oh, that I respect that. I know that. So I'm in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and this is my hometown. This is where I grew up. This is where I did not think I would end up, because everyone just, I don't know if I've just been otherworldly my whole life. But when I tell people I'm from here, they're like, no, you're not. And I'm like, yeah, this little town, it's my town, and I love it.
And, we need magical people all over the world. They're not just for LA and New York.
That's true.
San
Exactly.
Francisco, so.
100%. I love that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing. And, something that comes up, I feel like, is a theme that I see and hear from you again and again, is this power of our creative voice, and not just voice like speaking words, but of the power of our creativity, as like we are just, our essential being is a creative force. Do you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yesterday I went to the creek and I put my feet in there and I started writing about what I want my legacy to be, which is like a big question, but I'm in my 4th decade now. And so I've had some time to really consider like what this is. I don't have kids. And so all of the typical things that I think people check off their list, like I didn't have those. And so it's been this big question. And I'm like, you know what? I'm really identifying more and more as a creative force. Like people refer to me as an artist. And that was something that I just didn't want to take on before, because I literally thought that it was like a thing instead of this force that is available to all of us. And of course, my expression is, there's some people that feel like they don't have a creative bone in their body, but just by the sheer act of being on this planet, they're creative. And kids are always imagining and always super creative. So there is a point where it gets conditioned out of us. And that's one of the first things I wrote, was that I want to create this sort of school of unlearning where people can remember themselves as a creative force. And whether or not they want to go into a creative field, or they want to just be able to be in the energy of creativity, which is feminine, it's receptive, it's boundless. It's like, it's where, to me, it's the void. It's where all ideas live. And if we're willing to be a vessel for that creativity, it will be happy to express itself through us in whatever way feels best. So, I sort of lost the thread of your question, but what I wanted—
You're right on it. Keep going.
Okay, cool. What I wanted really to give people is permission to be creative again and to remember themselves as creative, because it's less about doing and it's more about just getting into a receptive state of mind. And that's why we sort of went through that threshold and took a breath and just softened to this energy that's around us all the time. And so, over the years, like my muse is all things mystery, it's spirituality, but my medium has always been artistic. And that's like, I don't know why it's been lost on me until now, but really over the course of the last, maybe since we last talked, I've really like taken this turn and been like, okay, I love making movies. I love adding sound to movies. I'm actually in the process of creating a documentary. I'm not really calling it that in my mind, because that seems like such a big project, and we can sort of get into how to
like little step at a time.
Exactly. We can get into how to bargain with, ourselves in that way. So I'm like, all right, what's the first step? I'm taking footage. So that's what I'm doing right now. And eventually it'll turn into something. But yeah, I'm again reclaiming the artist in myself and really starting to view myself as such. And it's really been so helpful to have that reflection from other people. Like the questions I get the most are about spirituality and about creativity. And I'm like, I could talk about creativity all day, because if we can bring sort of this lucidity to our waking time, our dream time is going to populate in a different way. It's all so connected. So yeah.
Love that. And I think, that our culture likes to kind of put things in their little boxes. So there's like a spirituality box and the creativity box. But to me, and I'm probably to you, they're like the same thing, because it's like we tap into that same place. When you tap into that intuitive place, it inherently opens up that creative awareness as well. Like you can't take them apart. I don't think, I mean, maybe you can in this infinite universe somewhere, but I'm just saying. Well,
and we're all creative, because really creativity to me is if you're thinking in your mind that you'd like to experience something, create something. It doesn't have to be, and I don't know, in this, like in our day and age, everything seems so like it has to be commercialized. Like I can't even think about being
Yeah.
creative unless I'm going to offer it in some way. But the energy of creativity is just taking the immaterial and bringing it down and allowing it to manifest, basically. And so, we touched on this a little bit, so hopefully I'm not jumping around too much, but if you're feeling like indecisive, stuck, unsure, to me, the antidote is just working with your own creativity. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in a linear path where you're like, okay, I want to create this thing, so I'm going to go get in a creative space to create it. It's just getting in that space of creativity and willing to be playful and willing to see what solutions suddenly arise as you're playing, basically. It's like, it can seem antithetical to what you're trying to do, but it's the process that has worked for me so much. And then you hear about like all of these like inventions that happened when people like went to sleep, or they like, were listening to music. They were just in a different part of their mind, and the energy of creativity was able to connect with them. So I just can't emphasize enough how much of a life-changing force this is, and for me.
Yeah. And, in your own life or what you see in other people, how does it look when someone isn't tapping into that? Like, what might be some signs or symptoms of
Yeah,
that?
I mean, we talked a little bit about, I think, stagnancy, feeling stuck, feeling overwhelmed, all of the anxiety inducing feelings, I think, can stem back to a lack of creativity. And, creativity is power. And that's the thing, is like, we've been so conditioned to give our power over to other sources outside of ourselves. But how can we like self-generate this power and put it out? It's so healing. We're so much in our mind, and we think the answer is going to come from that place. And it's not that way. So if you're feeling any of those things, there's so many things you can do, but I think creativity is one of the major things that can alleviate those feelings of stuckness, indecision, anxiety about the future. To me, it's like the silver bullet. Is that the right word? Is that what the silver?
I think so. Yeah.
It's the panacea. It's
the
like
cure-all.
the holy grail. Like, it doesn't fall around.
It brings it. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I beeped myself for you there.
Oh, you can bring it. Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's like ebbs and flows in life, and I've definitely been in places, and even in like throughout a single day, I'll be in a place sometimes where I'm like agitated and feeling that anxious, overwhelmed. And then I'm like, wait a second. And then I remember. It's like, it's a constant act of remembering for me.
It is. Yeah.
And what's it like for you? Like, for your journey, you said you've kind of recently been remembering and reclaiming this. How did it start to trickle in, if it did, or how did it start to flow in?
It's so multifaceted. I think one thing that I've done that's helpful is that I've just kept moving, even if I'm not sure if what I'm doing is right or if it's leading me in like in a positive direction. But I think that that's one thing that has always felt like the right move, is like, some people when they're driving, it's like, if they can decide between, like, if the light slows down and they can like, oh, I'm not going to wait for this light, I'm just going to keep moving. I'm sort of that person. And also, I have so many ideas in one day, and I think I can do them all, which is the problem. But I think now I just want to be sort of like a creative wellhouse for people and like come in and help them find a creative solution. Because that for me is not a problem, but I will say that I have felt stuck. I have felt like, I don't know if I'm moving forward. I don't know if I'm going in the right direction. What's happening? Even it happens to every single person. There is a human element of forgetting, so we can have the delight of remembering. So, we leave a field fallow for a few years, so when we plant the seed, the bloom is even more. So, all of that's wrapped up into creativity. I don't think there's like a perfect I saw someone like on a high wire walking, like, there's an edge that you walk with it, and you can sort of let yourself fall into complacency and forget that you can pick yourself up. And then there's just times when, against all of your best efforts, divine timing's at play, or there's something else at play. And then you sort of have to trust and sit back and realize that there are times when, to the best of your efforts, it doesn't seem like anything's happening. And, you know, I have so many reminders around my house. And the ones that I were thinking of was like, it's not a race. And that's a thing that we can think because we're comparing ourselves to other people, or, you know, that's in it too. And it's like, there also are seasons, and like the day you plant the seed is not the day you receive the fruit. So like, keep moving as the thing grows. Yeah, those sort of thoughts and ideas have been really helpful as I've, you know, gone into my own deserts. And, you know, there's a reason for that time when we're ruminating and unsure. You know, there's a lot of gifts that have come out of leaving my field fallow for a few years. You know, you get that like renaissance period, and then you have to do it all over again. So that's just, we talked about that. Exactly. Like if you haven't reinvented, if you haven't, if you don't have a new vision for your life and you're still living off the old one, it can start to feel like stagnant and stale, and you're not sure what needs to be switched up, but something needs to shift, you know?
Let's talk about this. Actually, there's two things here. One is, I think everyone intellectually knows this, but then when they're in the muck of it, their own process, they can forget it and beat themselves up. But like, I think there's a lot of pressure from the highlight reel of life that we see on social media, and you even spoke to us a little earlier of like, is your creativity even worth it if you can't like make money from it, or like put it out there? You know, is it even worth it if it's just something for you that no one's ever going to see or buy? And there's so much like perfectionism, and
Yeah.
like, oh, it's like, oh, I had this idea and then it was done and it was perfect. And like, no, the whole freaking messy middle, like there's a messy middle and a messy behind the scenes to everything. And so I don't know, I just want to speak to that and hear your thoughts on that as well. Cause I think even though we intellectually get it, like how do we embody and remember that, like actually accept it?
Two things occurred to me as I was listening to you. And one is, can you put a price on the joy of, okay, so transport yourself back into seeing kids play, like that sort of childlike joy. They're not trying to necessarily get anything. They're literally just being in the joy of creating. And that's what I found as I'm like horribly trying to freestyle and remember that like, oh, I used to rap all the time and write stuff. And, you know, my mom was like a really beautiful singer and I have more of a choir voice. Does that have a place? And I'm like, I feel so effing excited when I'm making these little mixtapes for myself. I'm like, I want to play you. Like,
I want it.
My first single is called Lolo, and it's actually with my former husband. And it's just us riffing, and like this beat came on and I was like, oh, it reminds me of like these like 80s, 90s rap songs that I listen to. And for me, there's nothing better. It's like, am I going to do something with this? Am I going to become some big producer? Who knows? But everyone has to start somewhere. And so I think I'm just remembering it's so easy. I'm like, I thought it was so hard that I couldn't do this. And so I'm again, just refinding these things and taking myself out of all these boxes that I think other people put me in. And maybe I stayed in for too long. And it's obviously a gradual process. So the first thing I thought was just like, you can't put a price on joy. So, you know, often our creative expressions are what gives us joy. And sometimes a creative expression can just be like, I forgot how fun it was to ride a bike. Like I rode my bike so much last year and I would go down this one hill, and you can't be going down a hill on a bike and feel sad. Well, maybe you can, but like so much, it would give me so many happy endorphins for the whole day. I would go down this one hill and my whole day would be set. So I'm just remembering how fun it is to, play. You know, I got really serious, and I can be really serious. And there are things that are worthy of our like serious adult mind, but not as much as we make it out to be. We're so serious about everything. And I'm like, how did this happen? How did it happen to us? What was the second thing I wanted to share? I lost it.
I will say you could package up that the one hill method.
Exactly. The one hill method. I mean, and that whatever that one hill is for you, it can look so different for different people. But for me, it's like, if I can involve my body and I can get into some of these like somatic practices without thinking of it so
So clinically, yeah.
can like, I can dance around really weird. If like sometimes in the middle of the day, if I get into a funk, I'm like, okay, put on music, stop doing what you're doing, lighten up. And I come back totally refreshed. And it took 3 minutes. We forget that there's all these little avenues in a single day that can sort of rescue us from the dirtiness of having to be an adult, all the time.
Right. Or like the burnout. Yeah.
Exactly.
I really hear you speaking, especially when you're speaking about your music and you're like, oh, it's so easy. And you don't know if you're going to be a big producer or do anything with it. It's like, I hear you speaking to this innocence.
Yeah.
And just this like innocence of the creative wellspring.
That's it. I've so returned to my innocence. I posted, there's this photo that my mom, is my mom in the photo? Anyway, it's of me when I was a kid and I'm laying on this bed. You can see my little cheeks.
I love this. I saw that.
I was like, one day I'm going to recreate this. And I did. And it just felt so innocent to look at my body and in this way. And I'm really, everything about what innocence is, it's like, you don't know yet, and that's okay. It's like the energy of the Fool and the Tarot. You're just like, okay, I'd like to do this and I'm going to endeavor to do it. And without all of those other restrictions, that's the reason that you can move through the entire wheel of that process and actually do it. It's like the energy of the beginner, which I've really been thinking a lot about. And, if we're like steeped in this world all the time, we're using this language all the time, it can be sort of a thing that loses meaning a little bit. And we have to like be creative about how we reinvent it. And I love the idea of innocence, especially when it comes to creativity, because, you'll ask a kid, like, are you creative? Can you sing? Yes. And then around 6 or 7, it seems like this shift starts to happen where we get self-conscious and we're like, okay, I can't do that, but this person can. And so, to me, it's like man-made. It's not something that comes in with us. It's like malware. We come in pretty like lit up, excited. And if our needs are met, at that time, we're really creative. We're really creative beings.
I'm laughing at malware. That's the best. I'm like, I need a little, what is it? Virus blocker.
Exactly. I mean, for real, we've taken on so much that isn't ours. And I think like, I'm in this class called The Architecture of Remembering, and it's basically about remembering how to be psychic. And it's easy. Like, I hate to say it that way, but like the information, when I think about like what it is, it's like, there's so many things that we can't see that influence our lives. So electricity, Wi-Fi, I love a good airdrop. I'm like, how does this shit work? It's Bluetooth. It's like the energy is all around us. And I'm like, oh yeah, there's this cosmic field of awareness, the Akashic records are like all right here. It's all right here. I'm just getting chills. It's so right here. But and this is why I want to teach more and more on practicing what creativity is, because you're really just remembering. You're remembering we already know how to walk into a room and sort of read it. Like our intuition talks to us, but we don't trust it. And so it's all about getting into that receptive phase and just playing without like, I'm seeing a lot of stuff on the internet. And I think it's good. It can have some whatever, but a lot of people are doing these like little intuition quizzes. So like, which rock am I going to pick? What color am I projecting to you? These are all like playful states we can get into to connect to that invisible ether that's available to all of us. And so, if it can be in like, I actually love school. I love the idea of school, and I love being, I love what you're doing. I love going to workshops. I love that, but it can be like we can like go into this space that we're used to and we can sort of shut off because we're used to critiques or being shut down or not being sure of our role in a group. And the type of groups that I really want to create have like a sacred container, but then we get in and it's just playful. It's like you can't do this wrong. It's all an experiment. It's really just all about remembering. So if you do it wrong, it's just like when you're doing anything, it's going to get easier to remember how to access all of this information that lives all around us. So
I love that. I mean, I feel that it's like this constant, it's almost like you have to have slippery skin and not get caught by the grasp of the rigidity.
Exactly. A little trickster, a little fox energy, a little, nope, just exactly.
Go screaming like a fox. Oh man. So something you talked to earlier too is about a vision, and talking about when you go through and you might be in a sort of stagnant funk or something, and realizing like, oh, wait, what's my vision? And I this is somewhere where I resonate so much with what you have to say about this. So will you just tell us about what a vision means to you, and where it might come from, and why it matters?
Yeah, I love that question. Recently, this Bible verse kept coming back to me, and it was like, without a vision, the people perish. And I'm like, oh, I think that that's literally what's happening now, is that so many visions have been handed to us and we've taken them on, and we've forgotten that our soul has an innate vision that it wants to see happen. And so for me, it's like, I've also noticed how I ask a lot of questions to sort of see where people are at. And I'm like, okay, what would you like from the universe? Like, be specific. And the things they say, and I've been on this train for so long, but now that I've really understood that, like, if there's like this global positioning, what is GPS? I'm calling it God positioning, whatever system, however it goes. If you just tell it like, and this is not like, I don't want this to sound like law of attraction fluff, because I really, like, we can talk about why that doesn't work in a minute and why I think it doesn't work for a lot of people. But I've just noticed that people aren't very specific about what they want to see come in. So it's sort of mixed results. And even if, like, people are scared to like sit down and set like an amount of money they want to make. And I'm like, I want to be really specific, because I've been sort of like very ambiguous with myself for whatever reason. And I'm just now getting into the place where I can ask really specific questions. And I've seen that, and some other practices I'm doing just really transform my life. And so I don't think you have to it can be scary to be like, okay, what's my legacy? What's my vision? These are all big questions I need to know right now. But it's sort of an unraveling. It's like, it's more of a like, take one step, the gods take a few towards you. This one wall comes down, you get some clarity, and maybe you do get to the point where it's like, you're on a vista, you understand more. But it is, again, it requires this creative sort of spirit to continue to learn how to ask the right questions. And so I've really gotten to a point where I'm like, okay, the reason we're also floundery is because there's not really a clear vision. There's not a clear vision for the world we want to create. And if we don't have that vision, we don't even know what steps to take, So it's also important to, continue to be in this process of refinement around what is unique to you. And I could spend a day with someone and be like, oh, I know what you're so great at. It doesn't have to be what you do all the time, but I think there's so many clues in our homes and what we do on a daily basis that could really give us an idea about our vision, and it again, it can just seem so big and scary. And that's not, I'm not like, write me a manifesto about actually I kind of am, but like,
You are. Yeah.
kind of am. I'm lying.
I've seen your manifesto.
Exactly. Yeah. And it changes too. There may be like a red thread that connects it all. And I do believe that, but these sort of things can shift as we move and shift and evolve. And that's part of it too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess there's a kind of element that I hear you speaking to, and this is something that I think about a lot of, like, we're not just being like, there's an answer of like answering the call, because you said something about your soul, something your soul wants to see. And there's like this calling of what wants to be brought into life, into form through you. But yet it's like a co-creation with this calling, this inner calling that's maybe an expanded part of you or in the universe, but also of like, okay, what do you need in your tangible life? And I think that's this intersection. And I'd love to hear, because there are, this all gets really tangled up with the sticky points of the law of attraction and manifestation and everything, because I think there's so many different approaches people take to this concept in general, I guess. So
can I just start with the main reason
please.
I think that it doesn't work? Because it really has occurred to me. So
like law of attraction stuff.
Exactly. So when we're thinking about the law of attraction, I think it requires, what does Abraham say all the time? Get into the vortex. And so to me, what getting into the vortex actually means is collecting all of your particles, like all your past stories. It's like you have to, the more that we can embody the present moment, the more we can call our active powers of participation with the universe to create what we want into being. But how often are we actually fully in the moment? For me, it was rare, and
Right.
it's not a judgment call. It's a thing that we learn how to do more and more as we take back our power from our old stories, as I interact with my dream time and use that information about how I want to be in the world, as I, wildly dance, that's bringing me fully into the moment. And then I don't even have to do anything. It's like if the signal's being beamed and I'm not in my logical mind thinking about how to do it, and I'm just in this joyful, creative, expansive part of myself, the law of attraction happens naturally. So, I just think it's so misunderstood. It's so like pop culture, and like I've made things happen that have been really hard actually. And I think actually the law of attraction is like, I see this like just trap, this next door that just opens and things like kind of come in. It's not without effort. Obviously, it's like your willingness to what do they say success is? Like meeting the moment, meeting this like a destined moment and being ready to like do the work or whatever. So it's all a part of it. But I think the main reason that the law of attraction is sort of like hit or miss is because, our energy is in so many different places. It really is. It's like, it's just everywhere. And so to bring it back home, I do these meditations where I just call back all my power as much as I can. Like if I have a dream where I'm in an old house, I'm like, okay, there's some power that I left there. I'm going back to recover it through this dream. Even if I'm not the victor in the dream, it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't have to be a dream where I'm like kicking ass. It can be a dream where my ass is getting kicked, but it's just showing me that there's energy there. So I've been doing a lot of like really fun, playful things to, reclaim my own sovereignty through, calling that energy back in. And for me, I've seen a shift already just with understanding that the reason that it doesn't work for a lot of people is because we're so preoccupied and we're not really in the present moment a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And another way I've heard this stated is like united will versus divided will. And my own personal journey of that has been, the divided will is so often because there's something that I truly, honestly want and am called for. So how divided will shows up for me is so often I'll have a vision, and it's something I'm authentically called towards. It's like for my soul, from my conscious self and my present time. I'm like, yes, I want that. But then there's a part of me who's like my inner child who's desperately afraid or conflicted about that for whatever reason, from, childhood trauma or from conditioning, from malware. Something in me is like, no, you can't have that because the consequences of having that mean such and such and such, and it's too scary. And so it's like that having this vision for me will set in motion a series of events that bring up those parts of me that are conflicted and divided. And then it's up to me to hold that space for myself, get the support, and reclaim that power. Not so just for the purpose of having the vision, but it's like for the purpose of the journey and being whole again. Like something, yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting the tingles. And
Whew.
that's so it. It's like, it's the call to adventure, as Joseph Campbell said. And, there's obviously all these things that are going to come into our lives as we ask for the vision. It doesn't mean that boom, boom, I've collected my energy, I'm here in the present moment, divine will. Sometimes it is like that. Sometimes I literally think of something that I'd like and I walk out and it's on my front porch for whatever reason. But, there often, there's this mythic call that happens. And then all of the challenges and people and places we meet are part of becoming the person who can own that vision. And I think that's part of it too. And it's like, I've had such a big vision for like the Girlfriend Manifesto, and it took me 6 years to really live into that. I had to practice. I had to like, work on not being such a raging introvert and learn how to like speak in front of people. So it is a process. And that's so important to pinpoint, because it's not just like abracadabra. Like we've come here to experience the challenges that make us worthy of our soul's calling. And so that's all part of it. All of those things, all of the events that we call in through our calling are part of it. And, we would be remiss to not talk about that and just talk about the magic.
Right. Like this is part of the magic.
It is. It is.
Mhm.
Exactly. You know what? It is. It so is. And it's not separate. It is a part of it. And that is something that I'm learning how to use, like use the challenges that arise as gifts, you know, like opening the box and being like, okay, there's stuff in here I don't like, but I'm going to be able to use it. And that's part of creativity too. Is like, I love the creative tension of actually limitation, you know, like when I think about people who are from my diaspora, it's like the people in the African continent have nothing, but they like make a radio out of a generator. And it's like, you know, like that sort of thing makes me so proud to be a part of the lineage that I am, because, you know, I think actually all the choices we have are making us so, that's part of the anxiety in the world, is that there's just too much. And I'm like, okay, this is the misuse of power, because just because you can doesn't mean you should, you know, and not to discourage anyone's dream, because there's space for everything. But I just think the sheer number of like choices we're given for so many things are a part of our confusion, you know, and sometimes a limitation. Like if you feel like you're backed into a wall and there's not much you can do, you're like actually about to break through, you know, like to me, that's the breakthrough point. So I love that like creative tension that happens.
Yes, yes. And I think all of what we're speaking to here is totally debunking this belief that people have that if you had to effort for it or something came up and it wasn't like sparkly pretty, then it wasn't magical and it wasn't like aligned. And I think that's some of the biggest BS. And I love that you're speaking to all of this.
Exactly. You know, like shadow work is basically what we were talking about. If there's like, you know, because there's so much under the surface about what's safe for us. So we can like consciously want something, and it seems like we're not able to bring it in, and we're like, what's going on? And it's like, there's so many things below the surface that are there keeping us safe, that are worth examining, you know, and you have to be willing to sort of, and to me, the subconscious is the mystery. And that's, we have to be willing to like pull down into the parts of ourselves that we don't understand, that we've disowned, in order to consciously be able to create these lives that we desire. So that's a big part of it too, is like, it's just this, the story about the golden Buddha, I talk about it a lot, because I think that's sort of the truth of who we are. We all come in like with these shiny souls, and seems like some of us can remember earlier. We go through this period of remembering, and then we unremember, we forget, and then we go back in, and it's like all these layers of mud were on this like golden Buddha, and it was put there to keep it safe. And then someone saw it just sort of glimmering, and they took all the mud off of it. And I think that's what the process that we're talking about is, like, remembering. It's just remembering. And that's why it's like easy. I just want to put that out there. I know it's
right.
Like, it's sort of like, it even challenges me, which I kind of like when I say something's easy, because, you know, easy and simple are like, it takes effort. It does. But I think that's what actually brings us authentic joy. All these shortcuts, all these hacks are so annoying to me, because I just think you shortcut yourself. And, you know, the farmers used to go out and like give their blood, sweat, and tears, and they would enjoy their food with their family. And there was so much, even just talking to my grandma about this, there was so much innate joy that came from hard work. And I think that that's something that our culture just wants to pop a pill. They want it easy, fast, but then they don't feel the satisfaction that comes with actually like putting in the work. So,
well, I want to explore this concept, because I think about this a lot. I mean, I work a lot. We've had to implement very strict boundaries of my days off, because I'm like, but it's because I love what I do and it means a lot, but I still need that playtime and downtime. And as a team, we're figuring out constantly, we're like, okay, what is, you know, we're paying attention to that flow of the energetics of like, okay, what are we efforting because we think we have to, versus what are we efforting because that's what's being asked in the moment of what's authentic? And also, where's there space and opportunity to bring in more play and fun and things that aren't, quote, work, but are still creating the outcomes? And this is an exploration, because I think there is the work, and then there's also a shift and an opportunity to bring in play. And I think that's exactly what you're speaking to with opening up to that flow of creativity and not always having to be mental, linear, logical.
Exactly.
And being in it.
And I think as we raise our consciousness, we will be able to work smarter and not harder. And I think life can be totally different than we're experiencing. I still think all of us have a little bit of hustle in us because
totally. We're in a fucking capitalistic society.
Just because we think it's the way that things happen. But I've like had such a personal renaissance of slowing down to speed up. I'm like, wow, I've made more money than I ever have. I've reclaimed my time. Yes, I do work a lot, but also, like you said, I love it and it feels less like work. And there's like a couple people who I follow recently who have made up little fun words for what they do, and work is not a part of it, because I think that it like actually turns this weird reptilian part of our brain on, and I don't really want to be working out of that part of my brain very much. So, you know, I'm going to think of a new word for what it means to create the life that I have, because sometimes I want to pinch myself, because I think success can mean so many different things to other people. Success to me is no one's knocking on my door asking for money. I don't have to wake up. My life has gotten so simple, Natalie. I don't have to wake up when anyone tells me. I can go like joyfully do my workout. If I want to go somewhere, I have the resources or and resources aren't just all money, but I have friends I could go stay at their house. Do you know what I mean? Like I feel so wealthy in other ways that aren't money. And I've had to redefine that for myself. I'm like, I feel so privileged. There's so many people that have so much. I just have nothing to complain about in the material realm. And the fact that I've been able to take back my time and my body, which I think are like the biggest resources that we give away to the machine. I'm like, I'm a billionaire. Like, fuck you, Bill Gates. I feel... And I'm going to do really good things as I continue to create this creative legacy that I think is really going to be resourcefully rewarded. So I'll just say it like that.
Rich life.
Yes.
Rich bitch. I like to call myself a rich witch.
I like it. I love it.
Oh my God. But something, you know, talking of taking back your body from the machine, I've really enjoyed witnessing this blossoming sensuality that is just like radiating from you in what I see you doing and being. Do you want to share like what's happening?
Man, I just got so emotional. I just think we've all not liked ourselves for so long, and I've really I don't know, through a series of events and through my life, I've finally gotten to this point where I'm really so appreciative of what the body can do more than like necessarily how it looks, you know? And I've really just come into this blooming around how to claim our bodies, even when we feel safe, even when we don't, how to, you know, I've realized that a lot of it has been through a physical practice. I really have like devoted myself pretty religiously to my bar practice. And it's interesting because I used to be a yogi, and, you know, I went there and, you know, there was just so much dogma, and I'm like, I just want to go to a place where, I love you, my bar people, but where people are just like basic and they're not talking about, they're just like, you know what I mean?
They're not striving for enlightenment.
Exactly. They're not striving for anything. They're probably just going there to get a six pack. But like the way that my bar teacher talks about how to like lean into the challenge, like if you don't lean into the wobble and bar, you don't experience gains, or you don't experience that growth. So if you stay like comfortably outside of your growth edge, you're not going to really experience that. So to me, they're like these little gurus. Every time they say something, I'm like, bing, it's so good. And so I've really experienced this coming home to myself. And I realized that there was so much numbness in my belly because I'd been like sucking it in for years. And I have a brother who's like 6'4". He's just like a really big dude. And I'm like, have you ever sucked in? And he's like, what? Like to him, it was like unfathomable that he would contort his body to like be something. And of course, I'm not making a blanket statement that of course men have, you know, issues about how they feel about themselves because of what society has projected onto us. But a big part of the reason that you can sense that blooming is because I've been in this real battle with myself about what beauty is, and if I am beautiful, and what that means, and how to really just love myself in spite of feeling, you know, times outside of my body. So I've been doing so many things differently, and I've really been experiencing this like, and I don't know if it's again just because I'm in the fourth decade where I'm like, this is who and what I am. Like, if I had known that I was like a fox in my 20s, I would have just burnt down the whole world. But now I feel like I can like handle this level of sensuality properly. So, I think it all just happens, and we all like, I love to think of us all as like a wildflower field, and there's some that bloom early and there's some that bloom later. And I feel a bit like a late bloomer, but it feels really good to like come home to myself and feel love and worthiness. And like, when you're young and you haven't really thought about those things yet, and they start to creep in, it's like I can even like connect with that part of myself if I get quiet enough. And I don't know if it's just over time that this has been able to happen, but I'm experiencing a real renaissance of like sexual, creative initiations, and being able to hold that energy within myself. And it's really, I'm happy about it.
That's amazing. And I love that because like, earlier we spoke of like creativity and spirituality being connected, but it's also embodiment and sensuality. And like our bodies can create more life. Like it's freaking nuts.
Yeah.
And like you said, like appreciate what our body can do versus how it looks. Oh my God. Yeah. What are you going to say?
Well, and just that, like, a thing that I was starting to tell myself, I do all the weird stuff. I do naked mirror work. I touch myself. It's not even weird. This is the community that can totally handle it. But I think one of the big shifts for me was like, but how do you feel? Do you feel beautiful? And granted, sometimes you don't, but like, there's a part of me that I can tap into. Like if I'm going through my day and like, I'm smiling or whatever, and I haven't looked in the mirror, I feel beautiful. Like, but can your body receive pleasure? Well, yes, it can, regardless of how it looks. Does it feel pleasurable to do this? Yes. And I started having more yes answers than no. And that was just really helpful for me to like create this sort of like checklist of pleasure, checklist of like, and that's the thing is like, creativity for me has been my answer to how I get through hard things. So like, okay, how can I think about this creatively? If someone watched me go through my day, it's extremely weird. And I think everyone's day should, if you need to crawl on the floor, if you need to turn upside down and look at life different, I literally do that a few times a week. If I'm like, I'm looking at things too just straight on, I'll turn myself upside down and look around my house and notice things I've never noticed before. And this changes it changes the physiology of your body. And that's been so important for me, just to embrace the weirdness of being alive. Like, we've sort of like, if there is an agenda, I go down rabbit holes. We all do. If there is an agenda and there is some sort of zombie robot thing that wants to happen, the only way that can happen is if we let go of all of the colorfulness of being alive. And I think the best people to look at for how to do that are animals and kids. Like, that's where I gained so much inspiration from, and then people who have remembered, like when you're around someone who's remembered, you're like, this person's the most beautiful person in the room, and they don't have to be, on the front of a magazine. They've just embodied themselves in a way where you're like, damn, she's hot, he's hot. And it's not like typical. And I think we all can do that. And I think we all should.
I love that. You're making a documentary. I'm like, can we get someone in there making a documentary? You, like,
yay!
There's a whole string of like documentaries.
Exactly. I mean, yeah.
I love that. Just like looking upside down, crawling on the floor, change of perspective, change of scene. We really do get so locked into these routines and habits and rigid ways of being, and not only physically, but also mentally, emotionally. It's like, exactly. Okay, shake it up.
Yeah. Mix it up. That's my favorite thing to do. That's kept my mind and body fresh. And like if you talk to an older person that's like still interested in learning, at least I'm always like, wow, that's so cool. Because, some people would be like, oh, she's old, just leave her. She's set in her ways. And like, I was at a shadow work, an event, and there was this woman who was 99. Like she didn't even stand up and like do some of the physical stuff, but she was just in the building. And I was like, yes, that's going to be me. I'm going to be in my 90s doing stuff with like 30-year-olds. So, you have to be willing to be the beginner in that way, and not be afraid to not know,
I don't know. Just kidding.
Me neither. Perfect. Everyone's just winging it. We're making it up. And
we really are.
That's part of being creative. It's like we're all just birthing these ideas, and there's no manual. I mean, there are guides and things. There's astrology. There's things that are like helpful, but really like that's part of our creative force that we've been talking about this whole entire time. Is like, and we're all doing it. We're all doing it all the time, and no one's talking about it, but now we are.
Now we are. And it's so true. You said something there of like, we're all just making it up. And I say that a lot. I'll talk to my husband, be like, we just get to make it up. Like, what are we going to make up? And I talk about it with my team sometimes. Like we get to decide. We get to decide.
Exactly.
We're the ones making it up. There's no mom, daddy, or whoever you say who we got to do.
Oh, I love this because there's no meaning maker. We're the meaning maker. If you've made a meaning in your life that feels shitty, remake it. Tell the story in a different way. And I have a Post-it note near my bed, and it's like, you're writing this story. So don't write yourself second fiddle. Don't write yourself as the like fun sidekick. Like write yourself as the heroine or the hero, and then arrive as such on a daily basis as much as you can. Do whatever it takes to just like put your shoulders back and be like, I got this, even though I don't.
Yes, I know, right? Imposter syndrome. Am I qualified? Am I doing it right? Da, 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 da. How do you get in touch with, I feel like there's so much excavating for people. Like you said, like that Buddha, getting the mud off, and then there's the shiny golden Buddha. Like, how do you get in touch with that? How you want to write yourself in? I mean, like, I almost feel like there's like a imagination boot camp or something, but it's not like with an agenda. It's like, all right, we're just going to make you imagine more and more and more until you get to the click of like, okay, this is actually what I want. Like, I guess the question I'm getting at here, okay, is how do you write in what you actually want versus what you think you want?
Well,
or should have?
What you did was so perfect is you just kept talking through your not knowing. And so like even with like some days I try to like freestyle rap a few times a week, and sometimes I'll like hit it and I'm like, yeah, this is good. And sometimes it's terrible and I'll feel so embarrassed. It's just me. I'll feel so embarrassed and I want to stop, but I'm like, no, keep the pen moving, keep your hand moving. Just continue through the awkward phase of the question. And I think that has been really important for me to understand, is like that ability to just keep moving, keep questioning, ask it different. If you ask it doesn't feel quite right, ask it again. I think like we can tend to give up so easy. I was just thinking to myself that I'm one of those people that could get like bucked off a horse. And of course I'd take the time to like lick my wounds, but there's nothing that really, you just have to get back on the horse. You have to get back on the horse. You have to trust yourself again. You have to trust love one more time. You have to know that you can be creative, because it's such a process of belief. And like you said, we're deconditioning ourselves. So we have to be patient, compassionate. There's a few things I always do is I'm like, I remind myself to be patient and compassionate. I remind myself to speak to myself like someone that I love. We can be so incredibly hard on ourselves and forget that we love ourselves. And that's why I have all these reminders around. It's not a perfect sum game. It's a human game. And as long as we're willing to like be in the mess of it, I think that we'll get where we want to go. Like every person that we admire just didn't give up. They just said, okay, you didn't want to like put me on. I'm going to put myself on. So like, I think that is the answer, is that spirit of continuing, and especially if we can do it in a playful way, we can have such a improved experience, because it literally isn't about the destination, because once you get there, you're like, it was 90% of the work was just like getting there. And if you were miserable or you were like drudging or you were angry, you're going to get to the thing and you're going to be drudgy, miserable, and angry. So like, how can we infuse all of the ways that we want to feel about getting the thing into our daily life and sort of see what magic can find us?
Oh yeah. I feel like we've just given people, like, you've just given them this huge hour of pep talk. They can listen to anytime they need to get in it.
Dude, that's like my thing. I have a best friend, and if I'm ever going to go do something new, I'm like, I call her and she just gives me a pep talk. It's so important, that inspirational piece. And that's what my community is all based on, because it's like, I'm not a healer. I'm just someone that like is a human who's going through the same things and know what it takes to just like arrive at a place every day. And sometimes it takes so much effort just to do this thing. And so having people in your corner that are like, yes, yes. And like, okay, one other thing, because I know we've been at it for a minute, but just like,
hey, I'm here.
Part of my part of what's given me back to myself has been plants. And I know that you talk to a lot of people who work with all kinds of plants, but that's been a huge part of helping me to remember. And I think that the plant legacy, like our plant friends are here to help us remember, and they all have a different vibration of that remembering. And, you know, plants and music and being a creator have been the things that have like saved me over and over and over again. So yeah, find what those things are in your life and let them help you.
I love that. I say to myself probably at least once a day, but multiple times per week, because if I told everyone about every little thing that we have to face, you know, on our path of making this and doing that, I just tell myself, just keep going. Because I'm like, wow, this could ruin us. I'm like, oh no, like devastation. And I'm like, just keep going.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh,
exactly.
It's okay.
And that's the mind. That the mind is so final. It's like, you know, it's basing its what it's telling you on everything that it knows. But then again, the subconscious is like the mystery. All the things we don't know are down there. So I love it that you can snap yourself out of that, like that mind judgment, and get back into the mystery. Well, how do I know? Like, all the good things are down there anyway. They're kind of like in the unknown. And so that's something to just a helpful nugget.
Helpful nugget. Just keep going. I love that. Keep moving. Keep going. Oh gosh. It's monumental. Visions. There's so much. I feel like we could talk about visions and visioning all day, and it's something I personally love a lot.
Something you did mention that I think that this is the direction I'm moving in, is really creating a space to have that creative exploration. Like I love the book The Artist Way, and that has inspired me so much. And I'm like, what does the artist way look like now? And like, how does the artist way look through me? And this is what I think will be my creative legacy, is like, you know, this school of unlearning that I'm talking about. It's literally going to be a school that's all about creativity and how to tap back into that and what that looks like. Because there's so many facets of it clearly that we've been talking about. But to me, it's like a fundamental force of life. It's something that it's what brought us here and what's innate in us and what's going to give our life that meaning that we're really looking for. And we have to get out of our sort of like linear way of looking at it. It's like, if I'm not a painter, I'm not a singer, I'm not an artist, am I creative? Well, yeah, you definitely are. And that's what I want people to remember, because then their vision can really can really bloom in their life. Whatever that is, you know, it's going to look different for every person. And that's what I love about it. You just get into this receptive, I feel like we're overusing the word creative, but receptive,
Hey, it's the theme of the day.
Exactly. Except like imaginative. Now I'm like, my little thesaurus opened up in my mind. I'm like, what other words are creative? Yeah. So look out for that. But that's something that's been really on my mind.
Well, tell us more about what you do offer and where people can find you and support you. Are you going to do any kind of like fundraising for this doc? This footage you are gathering?
Yes, I am probably going to do that. So it's Ayesha Ophelia, or you can search the Girlfriend Manifesto. All roads lead home. I work with women mostly. I do coaching and I do creative. Those are sort of my two umbrellas right now. So I do sort of like coaching, and then I do the creative aspect. And right now there's 22 women who are going through this. I don't even have a name for it, but we're literally opening ourselves to love through the removal of barriers. And I created an app, which they're testing for 90 days, that is all about how to broaden the net of possibility through synchronicity. And so instead of just swiping and like pressing and like finding someone that way, it's more about how you become magnetic. So maybe that will be the name of it, like how you become magnetic to what you want, especially when it comes to love, because I think it's like a thing I just thought would work itself out. And having been married and learning so many things through that process, I'm like, okay, any other thing I've wanted in life, I've really dedicated the time to it. It's like the quality of our relationships is so much of our life. And if we just put that on autopilot and we focus all our energy on the other aspects of our life, then the quality of our relationships are really going to suffer. And so, making the time and space to understand myself in that way is powerful. And so I'm documenting this whole thing on Zoom, but also they're sending me like some footage, and we're going to do some in-person stuff. So I'll stay tuned for ways to support, but we're in the phase of getting all of the documenting done. I'm also interviewing like Jungians and like people who are really thinking about synchronicity and like kind of like what's the word I want to use? Educational, and not that Jung is linear, but like a very specific way. And these are people who have dedicated their whole lives to the force of synchronicity. So I think it's going to be really interesting to talk to people who have dedicated themselves to something so abstract and sort of obscure. And a lot of people think it's like pseudoscience, and this crew doesn't agree, but
right.
A lot of people out there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, when you talk about your lived experience and you're like, there's something going on.
Exactly. Exactly. And continuing to not only just like know that that's happening, but Robert Moss calls it, you're a chiromancer if you invite in synchronicity and you learn how to speak the language of signs and symbols, which I just get off on. So I'm now a chiromancer. So I'm going to welcome in my beloved. I can already feel him. So I'll keep you posted.
Oh, exciting. And people can sign up for your newsletter on your website. And what is your website? Where can people go to find you and sign up for that beautiful newsletter?
It's just my name. It's AyeshaOphelia.com.
And as always, linked in the show notes, y'all. Don't panic. We got you. Oh, yay. So we're super stoked. I mean, you're gonna come teach a workshop here at EarthSpeak, which is a ritual container leading people through this creative awakening process and connection. So yeah, we're super stoked for that.
Yeah, come. We're going to go through several creative initiations. It's going to be very playful, very open. And I think you'll leave feeling how I do in my class, which is like, whoa, like I can do this. I can remember. So that's my intention and that's my hope. And I think that it will,
bring those sparks.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. So y'all can sign up on the website, earthspeak.love, or join the collective and get it included. And also make a bunch of friends when you join the collective. I mean, it's the obvious option of my choice, but
I would definitely recommend that.
Thanks. So thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us and just sprinkling some of your magic into our ears today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All the roads are windy.
Listen to over 200 free EarthSpeak podcast episodes on your favorite podcast app, and visit earthspeak.love to learn about our collective community and workshops.